she entered the house and vanished without a trace. The unexpected truth shocked everyone. A woman came home from the supermarket and disappeared under strange circumstances. When the police joined the search, they thought the answer to this mystery was quite obvious. However, the turn of events they encountered surprised even the most experienced detectives, as none of them expected anything like this. Kelsey Barrett was born on September 15 in 1989 in the American city of Moses Lake, Washington. She lived on a farm with her parents and older brother and had been helping them with chores since childhood. She enjoyed working on the farm, but what fascinated her the most were the agricultural planes that treated crops from the air or scattered seeds. Kelsey had always dreamed of riding in such a plane, and right after school, she enrolled in a local college to become a pilot. After obtaining her license, Kelsey worked as an instructor at a flight school and continued helping her parents on the farm. But despite her love for teaching people to fly and working on the farm, her biggest dream was to start her own family. In 2016, at the age of 27, Kelsey got her chance. She met a man named Patrick online, and they instantly hit it off. He was a farmer just like Kelsey, and shared her desire to build a large family. The couple communicated for several months before Kelsey decided to move to Colorado to live with him. They got engaged shortly after her move. Kelsey secured a position as an instructor at a flight school specializing in training military pilots. It was a prestigious job, but the flight school was located in another town, about 120 kilometers from Patrick's farm. Because of this, Kelsey rented a place in a town called Vidian, which was closer to her workplace. Despite living apart, the couple tried to spend all their free time together, and their relationship progressed quickly. In early 2017, Kelsey became pregnant, and they had a daughter. It seemed like Kelsey's dream of having her own family was finally coming true. However, shortly after the birth of their child, her relationship with Patrick began to deteriorate. Kelsey noticed that he had grown distant, started withdrawing, and generally lost interest in their family. Nevertheless, she didn't plan to give up on their relationship and did everything she could to mend things. On November 22, 2018, Kelsey planned to cook Thanksgiving dinner. That morning, she called her mom, shared her plans, and went to the supermarket to buy groceries for the meal. Over the next few days, Kelsey sent her mother several messages, but then suddenly stopped responding. At first, her mother thought she was just busy. After all, she had a job and a 1-year-old daughter who required constant care. However, the calls and messages remained unanswered. She called her son, who told her that his sister hadn't responded to him for several days either. Eventually, Kelsey's mother decided to call Patrick, hoping he could shed some light on the situation, but his story raised more questions than answers. He claimed that he and Kelsey had broken up. According to him, it had happened on Thanksgiving, over a week earlier. Kelsey had allegedly wanted some time alone. On Thanksgiving Day, she had left their daughter with him, taken some of her belongings, and hadn't been in touch since. Kelsey's mother found this story highly suspicious. First, she seriously doubted that Kelsey would leave her 1-year-old daughter with her father and never visit her. Second, they had spoken on the very day this supposedly happened, and Kelsey hadn't mentioned anything about breaking up with Patrick. On the contrary, she had been in a good mood and was planning to cook a holiday dinner. Kelsey's mother asked Patrick to go to her house and check if everything was okay. He agreed, but said he needed to finish some work on the farm first. However, she never heard back from him and decided to contact the police. She explained the situation, and the local department sent an officer to Kelsey's house. The officer found Kelsey's car parked in front of the house, but no one seemed to be home, as no one answered the door. Since the police couldn't enter the house without a warrant, they could only inform Kelsey's mother that they hadn't been able to find her. However, the officers did speak to Patrick, and he repeated the same story, that Kelsey had allegedly left him and wanted to be alone. He added that Kelsey had taken some of her belongings, including her gun. He explained that she had been acting strangely lately and that he feared she might do something irreversible. The police asked to be let into Kelsey's house, and there they made several more strange discoveries. All of Kelsey's belongings were in their usual places, including her clothes, documents, and other items she would have definitely taken with her if she had gone somewhere. However, the keys to her car were missing, even though the car itself was parked outside. This was highly suspicious. It was hard to imagine a scenario where Kelsey would take the keys but leave her car behind. Eventually, the local police department decided to open an investigation into her disappearance. Their first step was to request data from Kelsey's smartphone. By analyzing its geolocation, investigators discovered that the phone had last sent a signal on November 25 from a small town called NB in Idaho, about 1.5 kilometers from her home. The police spoke to Kelsey's relatives, who said she had no friends or acquaintances. They had no idea why she would have gone there. Detectives requested assistance from their colleagues in Dink, but they couldn't find any trace of Kelsey. Given how small the town was, this was strange. The police continued searching for other clues. They obtained footage from the supermarket where Kelsey had gone shopping on Thanksgiving. The footage showed her behaving completely normally, with no signs that she was planning to run away. Kelsey bought groceries for the holiday dinner and a flower before leaving the store. The police also re-examined her house but found no leads. This went for several days, during which Kelsey's mother and brother flew to Colorado to join the search. They stayed at her house, and her mother immediately felt that something was off, though she couldn't pinpoint what. At the point, Kelsey's older brother went to use the toilet and accidentally noticed something red on the inside of the bowl. He reported it to the police, who confirmed it was blood. However, this discovery wasn't entirely unexpected. Although investigators had already searched the house, they had done so superficially. This time, forensic experts decided to use luminol, a special solution that reveals traces of blood on surfaces, even if it has been washed and is invisible to the naked eye. First, they sprayed it in a bathroom, and a terrifying scene unfolded before them. Blood was practically everywhere. A similar situation was found in the living room, where there were also large blood stains. Experts sent samples to the lab, where it was confirmed that the blood belonged to Kelsey. However, among all these samples, they found something else. 2 foreign DNA samples, one from a man and one from a woman. Thus, the police concluded that Kelsey was most likely no longer alive and focused on identifying the sources of these DNA samples. Naturally, Patrick immediately became the prime suspect. Investigators had already found his version of events strange, but now, with near certainty that Kelsey was dead, he seemed even more suspicious. The police obtained his statements, but they contained no useful information. However, detectives were already leaning toward the theory that Kelsey had been murdered on Thanksgiving, November 22nd. The problem was that, apart from text messages from her phone, there was no evidence she had been alive during those days. The police believed she might have been killed shortly after returning home from the supermarket, meaning someone else had been sending the message from her phone. Then detectives noticed an interesting detail. They saw that Patrick had repeatedly called the phone number with a ding area code, both before and after Kelsey's disappearance. Upon requesting information about the number's owner, they learned it belonged to a woman named Crystal. Investigators called Crystal and asked how she knew Patrick. The woman said they co-owned several expensive horses. When asked when she had last seen him, Crystal initially said she couldn't remember, but then she admitted they were supposed to meet after Thanksgiving. According to her, they had planned to buy another horse, and she had driven to his place in Colorado. However, she realized the trip was over 100 kilometers long. Detectives found this story dubious. Crystal also claimed she hadn't used her own car for the trip, but had borrowed a friend's car because it was more fuel efficient. Finally, the detectives asked if she knew Kelsey. Crystal replied that she had heard about her in the news but had never met her in person. This also seemed strange to the detectives, as Crystal lived in another state and news about Kelsey hadn't yet reached national outlets. After speaking with Crystal, the detectives decided to look into her more closely. They learned she had recently discovered her husband and contacted him. When asked if he knew Patrick, the man shared an extremely interesting story that contradicted Crystal's account. It turned out that Patrick had been Crystal's first love. Over the years, they had periodically dated and broken up but remained in touch. Her ex-husband added that their relationship had continued even after their marriage. According to him, Crystal had still been seeing Patrick in 2017, when he was already engaged to Kelsey. But that wasn't all. The ex-husband said Crystal had initially told him she was visiting friends from November 24th to 25. But after the police contacted her, she admitted she had actually been in Colorado. Then on December 4th, Crystal asked him to accompany her to buy a new phone, claiming she had lost hers. Detectives immediately noted that this was the same day the police had confiscated Patrick's phone. They had enough grounds to obtain a warrant for Crystal's DNA sample. Investigators flew to her in Idaho, and she provided a sample. However, she flatly refused to answer the questions. While waiting for the lab results, the police contacted the friend who had lent Crystal her car for the trip to Colorado. She allowed them to inspect the vehicle and mentioned that she kept a gun in it. The detectives found the gun, but one bullet was missing. The friend insisted the gun had been fully loaded when she lent the car and had no idea where the bullet had gone. But this was just the tip of the iceberg. The police contacted another friend of Crystal's named Michelle, and her testimony completely changed the case. Michelle said Crystal had called her in late October, a month before Kelsey's disappearance, and shared an outrageous story. According to Michelle, Crystal tearfully revealed that Patrick had asked her to kill his fiancée. He justified it by claiming Kelsey was mistreating their daughter, but said he didn't want to kill her himself because it would be obvious he was guilty. Michelle advised Crystal to go to the police, but she never did. Michelle's account drastically altered the situation, and the police had little doubt that Patrick and Crystal were involved in Kelsey's murder. However, they still hadn't received the DNA results and lacked concrete evidence about what had actually happened. While investigators searched for additional clues, another unexpected twist occurred. Crystal called them and said she had hired a lawyer and was ready to testify. She admitted that Patrick had killed Kelsey and revealed that she had helped clean the blood from the house after the murder. According to Crystal, Patrick had planned to get rid of Kelsey for months. Initially, He had hoped Crystal would commit the murder. As she had told her friend, he insisted Kelsey was abusing their daughter and using drugs and alcohol, so he needed to kill her. Crystal agreed to help him, and 2 months before the murder, they devised their first plan. The idea was for Crystal to mix a lethal dose of medication into Kelsey's favorite coffee. Since Crystal worked as a nurse, she had access to such drugs, but there was one problem. The 2 women didn't know each other, so Patrick and Crystal created a cover story. Crystal would pretend to be a new neighbor who had recently moved to Kelsey's area. In September, Crystal took Kelsey's favorite coffee and went to her house. She knocked on the door, and the 2 women spoke for a few minutes before Kelsey took the coffee and said goodbye. However, Crystal couldn't bring herself to poison the coffee and just wanted to see Kelsey in person. Thus, the first attempt failed. Patrick's next plan involved Crystal driving to his farm, picking up a pre-prepared iron pipe, and going to Kelsey's house to kill her. Crystal drove over 1,000 kilometers, took the pipe, and approached the victim's house, but ultimately couldn't bring herself to commit the crime. The third plan was similar, but instead of a pipe, Patrick left a baseball bat for Crystal. Once again, she couldn't go through with it, and Patrick realized he would have to do it himself. According to Crystal, on the afternoon of Thanksgiving, Patrick came to her house and suggested they play a game. He had allegedly bought scented candles for the holiday and asked her to guess their smells blindfolded. He tied her eyes, then took the bat and committed the murder. It's worth nothing that their daughter was in the next room the entire time. After the murder, Patrick placed Kelsey's body in a container and put it in the trunk of his car. Then, he and their daughter calmly drove to his relative's house for Thanksgiving dinner. While his family celebrated, the car with the victim's body was parked just meters away from their home. After dinner, Patrick took the container to a small town called Cripple Creek, where he had rented a barn, and left the body there for several days. That same day, he called Crystal and told her about the mess he had made. She immediately realized he had likely killed Kelsey. Crystal borrowed her friend's car, hoping it would help cover their tracks if the police investigated, gathered cleaning supplies, and drove to Colorado. While en route, Patrick called again and warned her to be careful because he couldn't find one of Kelsey's teeth and didn't want her family to discover it. When Crystal entered the victim's house, she was met with gruesome sight. Blood was everywhere, including on the walls and ceiling. It took her over 4 hours to clean it all, but some stains could be removed even with chemicals. She then collected blood-stained items, stuffed them into trash bags, and took them to the car. After finishing the cleanup, Crystal went to a gas station, where Patrick filled a canister with gasoline. Then they drove to the barn, retrieved Kelsey's body, and returned to Patrick's farm, where they burned the remains. Notably, Patrick's mother came out of the house at one point and watched them for a while. Whether she understood what was happening remains a mystery. Before Crystal left, Patrick gave her Kelsey's phone, and for a while she responded to messages from Kelsey's relatives to keep them from suspecting anything. But a few days later, she destroyed the smartphone. Despite helping Patrick cover up the crime, Crystal insisted she hadn't acted of her own free will. She claimed she was afraid of becoming his next victim and had complied out of fear for her and her children's lives. She said he had threatened to kill them. In court, Crystal said she had wanted to help the police catch Patrick, which was why she had deliberately left some bloodstains unwashed in Kelsey's house. However, investigators were skeptical of this claim. Crystal had countless opportunities to contact the police and prevent the crime, but not only had she allowed Patrick to commit murder, she had also nearly cleared it out herself 3 times. Even after the murder, Crystal hadn't gone to the police but had helped Patrick cover his tracks. Her eventual confession wasn't motivated by a desire to do the right thing. In reality, her lawyer had advised her to strike a plea deal with the prosecution, under which she would face only one charge: destroying the victim's phone. Despite her detailed account, the police still needed physical evidence to take the case to trial. They had already searched Patrick's farm and found nothing suspicious. But now they returned with Crystal, who showed them the exact spot where they had burned the remains. Patrick had done an excellent job concealing the site, so forensic experts had to conduct a small excavation. Eventually, they found traces of a burned body. However, nothing usable for DNA analysis remained. The only thing they found was a tooth Crystal had discovered during the cleanup, but it was too badly damaged by the fire to link it definitively to Kelsey. By this time, the DNA test results from the 2 samples found in the victim's house had come back, matching Patrick and Crystal. As a result, Patrick was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. For the next year, he remained behind bars as the prosecution prepared the case for trial, refusing to admit guilt. According to the prosecution, Patrick had wanted to get rid of Kelsey for several reasons. First, their relationship was falling apart, and he no longer wanted anything to do with her. But since they had a daughter together, he saw murder as the only solution. Second, Patrick was in serious financial trouble and risked losing part of his farming business. Investigators believe this could also have motivated the murder. Despite the lack of a clear motive, the police had irrefutable evidence of his guilt by the time the trial began. They analyzed Patrick's smartphone location history and discovered he had spent several hours at Kelsey's house on the day of the murder. Patrick insisted he had only stopped by briefly to pick up their daughter and drop off some items. Additional proof came from a neighbor's security camera, which showed Patrick entering the house with Kelsey's daughter and not leaving until hours later. Then Patrick's phone traveled to his farm, but the victim's phone remained near his the entire time. Apparently, he hadn't even thought to turn it off. Moreover, Kelsey's phone continued moving with his for several days until he gave it to Crystal. Detectives also found multiple surveillance camera recordings between towns that captured Patrick. One showed him with the container he later used to hide the body. Another, at a gas station, showed him and a Crystal filling a canister with gasoline. During the trial, another interesting fact emerged. A cell phone store employee testified that Patrick had come in with a strange question on the day the police confiscated his phones. He had asked how to remotely erase all data from a smartphone. Another inmate who had shared a cell with Patrick while he awaited trial also testified. The cellmate said Patrick had made a list of people he wanted to kill, including Crystal, her ex-husband, and Kelsey's mother. Given all the evidence and Crystal's testimony, the jury unanimously found Patrick guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in the prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 156 years. As for Crystal, due to her plea deal, she received only 3 years in prison. Later, the judge reduced her sentences to 1 year with the possibility of early release. Thus, she was freed long ago, despite her role in enabling the crime. In the end, Kelsey's family gained custody of her daughter, who now lives with them. Her parents also established a charitable foundation in Kelsey's memory to help aspiring pilots. Share your thoughts on this story in the comments, and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.